Hi, I'm Jeff Christian. Welcome to C-Suite Recruiter. What I want to talk about today is the winning of the largest CEO search ever, and also the most competitive and the one that got the most news, which was kind of unusual. And that was the CEO search for Hewlett Packard. I have no idea why we actually ended up having to hire security to keep journalists from calling in to find out who our candidates were. But that was the kind of media attention that this CEO search had. I think part of it had to do with the fact that HP had never really hired from the outside. IBM had already gone outside for an outside CEO. And they were considering, by the way, the same two people that were considered for the IBM search. And I think Jerry Roach had done it from Heidrick. But all the big searches up until then either went to Tom Neff from Spencer or Jerry Roach from Heidrick. Those are the guys that I looked up to. And in fact, there was articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal that said the search was definitely going to go to one of the two of them. Well, how I got in there when I was, I think, 38 years old, and why I was chosen, which, by the way, the media was very critical of because I had never done a CEO search anywhere near that size at the time. But I was doing all of HP's search work. And Lew Platt, who they were replacing, which I thought was a complete disaster. Lew was a friend and a mentor of mine, and later on ended up running Boeing and turning Boeing around and proved that he was probably the best CEO or one of the top 4 or 5 CEOs in the entire world. But HP was getting beat in the marketplace by Sun Microsystems. The whole reason they were doing that search was that Sun was beating them in the financial services market, in the financial workstations for brokers and for financial service, hedge fund managers. They were not winning in that market, and the board felt the company wasn't aggressive enough, and it needed someone from the outside that really had more street savvy, that understood sales and marketing better than anyone else that they had at the time in the company. Now, they would have considered putting Dick Ackborn in right away. In fact, Dick was the #1 candidate before Lew Platt was named. And the reason why Lew Platt got that job was that Dick was not willing to move from Idaho, where he ran the printer business, to Palo Alto to run all of HP. But Lew ended up, in my opinion, being an extraordinary CEO, and I could not say enough things about good things about Lew. He cared about everybody in the firm, in the company. He felt he served all of the team members, all of the HP employees, and none of them served him. He was just that kind of person. But Lew had told me, he said, Jeff, we're going to do the search. You've got a shot at it. And I want you to go meet Sam Ginn. He's the CEO of Verizon. He's the chairman of our search committee. And I can't make the decision. It's going to be up. It's going to be up to Sam. So I got prepared. And I put together the entire search strategy in a book, a bound book. I had recently done a few CEO assignments that had gotten me in contact with a number of the people that Lew wanted. One of them was the COO of Sun Microsystems. I already had him in the presentation. I had broken down every single market that HP could go into: software, telecom, semiconductors, computing, workstations, and found the top 2 or 3 people out of every single one of them. I had the COO from Intel. I had some of the top people from AT&T. And that presentation and making transparent a strategy, a successful strategy, I think is what I ended up winning, how I ended up winning that search. So I met with Sam. I made the presentation. He was planning on meeting with both Jerry Roach and Tom Neff within the following days. I got a call when I got back to my office later that day, and Lew said, Jeff, you've got the search, but you only got it for 30 days. You don't get it done in 30 days, we're going to go with Heidrick or Spencer. And so I'd been given in that meeting, by the way, with Sam, a copy of Fortune magazine. On the cover of Fortune magazine was Carly Fiorina. And they wanted to make a statement. And I think Lew even felt, because he was always very pro-diversity and felt women needed to be further up in the company, and he felt good about that. But I think that they were definitely enamored with this story, which was really kind of blown out of proportion. Carly had not done everything that story said that she had done within AT&T. She wasn't as high level a general manager. She definitely wasn't the most powerful woman in corporate America, which is what it said. But we all believe media. That is a strange thing. If it's in print, we can believe it to be the truth when it may not be. But anyway, from the very beginning, Carly was the #1 candidate. But they never ended up seeing Tom Neff or Jerry Roach. I made such a presentation, and I showed that I was going to be so thorough, and I knew what their concerns were. I had already planted a seed, both in Sam Ginn's mind in my first interaction in terms of scheduling the call. There's always something that happens before you meet with someone in a shootout. There's always an event. And to have a conversation with who you're going to meet is very important. I had already planted the seed that Heydrich or Spencer was locked out of 80 to 90% of the candidate universe because of 3 levels of hands-off. I knew that was one thing that I could bring to the table that they couldn't. I could get to everybody. And if I showed them that in my presentation when I first met, and then sent a copy to the rest of the board members, I was showing them a strategy where I knew that my competition was not going to bring a strategy with them. And that's what I think won the project. And that plus the fact, the work that I had already done for HP. I was a known entity. But when Lew called and told me that, I have never had the experience before of being, they say a foot off the ground floating. I actually felt I was floating. I stood up at my desk, and I just felt my feet were off the ground. I couldn't believe it. I had believed in the media that it was either going to be Jerry Roach or Tom Neff. I had read those articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, but I was able to win the search. I wish I was able to have had them keep Lew and made sure they knew that the best candidate was Lew. They had me interview the top candidates, but Lew was not one of them. Lew had already decided to resign to get out of the way and do the right thing, even though he knew he was probably the right person and that we weren't going to find someone better. But he was too humble to ever say that. But I knew that. It would have been definitely a different HP. We would still have that same the great HP that we once had. It's a new HP. It's a different HP. Thank you very much.